What if the people who are closest to death are actually the ones who can teach us the most about how to live? Today, we're going to dive into some really profound wisdom that was gathered by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross from people at the very edge of their journey. Let's get into it. So, this is the big question, isn't it? The whole point of her work isn't really about dying. It's about what facing our own mortality shows us about how we should be living right here, right now. And honestly, it's a question that can change everything. And this is the core idea. When all the noise of daily life, the worries, the to-do lists, when all of that just fades away, this powerful clarity comes through. People who are dying see what truly matters, and Kubler-Ross believed their wisdom is a gift for every single one of us.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with where this wisdom comes from. Then we'll unpack 3 huge lessons on authenticity, relationships, and fear. And then we'll bring it all together with the ultimate takeaway for living your one precious life.
So, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her co-author David Kessler spent decades just listening. They sat with thousands of people in their final days, and out of all those incredibly intimate conversations, they started to see these universal truths about what really makes a life meaningful.
Okay, our first big lesson is all about authenticity. It's about peeling back all those layers of the roles we play and the expectations we're trying to meet, just to find the person we were always meant to be underneath it all.
Michelangelo had this beautiful way of putting it that just captures this idea perfectly. He didn't see himself as creating a statue. He saw himself as releasing the one that was already trapped inside the stone.
And that's exactly it. Our authentic self isn't something we have to build from scratch. It's already in there. The real work is just chipping away at everything that isn't us. The fears, the social pressures, the self-doubt.
David Kessler, the co-author, actually learned this the hard way. He was on vacation and he realized he was just performing the role of enthusiastic tourist, running around trying to see everything. And he was miserable. So he stopped and asked himself, what would I do if nobody was watching? And the answer was simple. Sleep in, read a book. By dropping the performance, he actually found real happiness. And here's the thing, being real doesn't just help us. It completely transforms our relationships. There's this story about a colleague of Kubler-Ross who sent her a card that said, "Jealous as hell, congratulations anyway." And because of that, she knew she could trust him completely. That raw honesty created this incredibly powerful, safe connection between them. Now, let's move on to our next big lesson, because this builds right on top of authenticity. Let's talk about relationships. What the dying teach us is that our connections with other people are the most important classrooms we have for learning about ourselves and, well, how to love. Think about this story of a woman whose husband passed away completely unexpectedly. She remembered their very last evening together, and it was totally ordinary. They had dinner, watched a little TV, a kiss goodnight. The next morning, he was just gone. And her heartbreaking lesson from that? There are no ordinary moments. That experience taught her to be completely present in every single interaction, because in any relationship, there will always be a last time. Every moment is an absolute gift. Then you've got the story of James. He was in a 2-year relationship that ended, and he felt like a complete failure. Even though he knew deep down it wasn't the right match for the long run, he was just so angry and hurt. But later, when he and his ex-partner reconnected, they had this amazing realization. They saw that their time together had actually helped both of them grow into better people, preparing them for the relationships that came next. So the big insight here is that the relationship wasn't a failure at all. It was a success because it served its purpose, which was growth. And finally, there's Hillary, who was going through cancer treatment. One evening, her room was just packed with friends, all of them offering love and support. She'd been so worried about not having a romantic partner, but in that moment, she was just overwhelmed by all the love that was already surrounding her. Her story teaches us that love isn't this one narrow thing. It comes from friends, from family, from community. We find wholeness not by searching for one single person to complete us, but by learning to accept and receive love in all of its beautiful different forms. And that leads us to our final core lesson, fear. The dying have such a unique perspective on this. They teach us that the real tragedy of fear isn't that it exists, but that we let it stop us from truly living. A really helpful way to think about most of our anxieties is this acronym, false evidence appearing real.
So much of what we're afraid of are just stories we tell ourselves, right? Projections of what might happen. They feel incredibly real, but they often have no power at all until we give it to them. Take the story of Troy, for example. He had an autoimmune disorder that left him physically okay, but emotionally, he was paralyzed by fear. He was afraid of his own illness, he was afraid of the world. Then, he took a job caring for a woman named Jackie, who was terminally ill and absolutely terrified of dying alone. And by stepping into her fear, by holding her hand and offering her comfort, Troy ended up confronting his own. In that single act of compassion, he discovered that love was so much more powerful than his fear. He didn't just help her die peacefully, he actually freed himself. So, after all these powerful lessons about being real, about our relationships, about facing our fears, what is the ultimate message? Well, it all comes down to embracing your one precious life, right here, in this moment. When people are at the end, they don't wish for another promotion or a bigger house. The authors heard this over and over again. They wish for one more sunset, one more conversation with someone they love, one more chance to just look up at the stars. Ultimately, the lesson from all of their work, when you boil it all down to its absolute essence, is this one simple, powerful truth. You only get one shot at this life. And so that leaves us with the only question that really matters. This isn't a dress reversal. The life you have is happening right now. So how are you going to choose to live it? Starting today.